Hello everyone. Article 21 of the Indian Constitution guarantees protection of life and personal liberty. It states that no person shall be deprived of his life or personal liberty except according to the procedure established by law. In this presentation, an attempt would be made to briefly touch upon the legislative history of the article and the interpretation given to the article by the Supreme Court in the first 3 decades of the independent India. Speaking of legislative history, originally in the draft report of the Subcommittee on Fundamental Rights, the article, which was clause 11, read as no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. The final report of the committee reproduced the article as clause 12 without any modification, except that the legal equality provision was also combined with the former, and it now read as no person shall be deprived of his life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall any person be denied equality before law or the equal protection of laws within the territory of India. When the clause came up for consideration before the advisory committee, K.M. Panikar, drawing a distinction between the right to life and liberty on the one hand and the right to property on the other, said that while the right to life and liberty should be regarded as absolutely sacred, not subject to any other restriction except that of public order and tranquility, the right to property should be guaranteed only subject to legislation. As a possible way out of the practical difficulties created by coupling the life and liberty provision with property provision, he suggested omission of the latter from the text. The suggestion was finally adopted by the committee, and the due process provision, after the omission of the word property, was incorporated in clause 9 of the report submitted to the Constituent Assembly. The constitutional advisor, in reproducing it in clause 16 of his draft constitution, restricted the scope of the expression liberty by adding the word personal before it. He justified the change on the ground that the word liberty by itself might be construed widely unless it was qualified by the word personal. For example, even price control might be regarded as interference with liberty of contract between buyer and seller. The change was approved by the drafting committee. The drafting committee introduced a far-reaching change in the clause by replacing the expression without due process of law by the expression except according to the procedure established by law, which the committee felt was more specific in its import, and this was borrowed from Article 31 of Japanese Constitution. The text of the provision thus recast by the committee was incorporated in Article 15 of the draft constitution, which read as no person shall be deprived of his life or personal liberty except according to procedure established by law, nor shall any person be denied equality before law or the equal protection of laws within the territory of India. Draft Article 15 aroused a keen controversy regarding the respective merits of the expressions due process of law and procedure established by law. There were about 20 amendments, most of them seeking to replace the latter by the former or a similar expression. Raising his lone voice in support of the retention of the expression procedure established by law as against the due process provision, Alladi Krishna Swami Iyer argued that the verdict of 3 or 5 gentlemen sitting as a court of law on what exactly was the due process, according to them, in a particular case, could not be regarded as more democratic than the expressed wishes of the legislature or the action of an executive responsible to the legislature. In the United States, even the minimum wage law or a restraint on employment had in certain cases been regarded as an invasion of personal liberty. He again referred to the absence of uniformity in the interpretation of the phrase in the decisions of the US Supreme Court. He feared that the clause might prove to be a great handicap for all social legislation, for the ultimate relationship between employer and labor, for the protection of children, and for the protection of women. At the stage of clause by clause consideration of the draft constitution, when the Assembly discussed draft Article 15, There was no debate on the second part of the article dealing with equality before the law and equal protection of the laws, and the debate in the assembly was entirely about the first part. The legal equality provision continued to be coupled with the protection of life and liberty provision through various stages thereafter. The draft article, as proposed by the committee, was accepted by the assembly without any change. At the revision stage, the drafting committee split this article into two separate provisions and renumbered it as an independent article containing the provision relating to equality, which was finally adopted in the Constitution as Article 14. All the amendments for replacing the words procedure established by law by the words due process of law or other similar expressions were negatived, and Article 15, as recommended by the drafting committee, was adopted without any change, which now stands as Article 21 of the Constitution. The vote of the Assembly did not finally set the controversy at rest. A large part of the Assembly, as also Dr. Ambedkar himself, was greatly dissatisfied with the wording of the article. Even outside the Assembly, the feeling in favor of incorporating in the Constitution the due process of law provision in some form or other was so deep that the vote of the Assembly against it evoked a great deal of public criticism. It was felt that draft Article 15 gave to Parliament complete freedom to act as it wishes, to provide for arrest of any person under any circumstances it deemed fit. A new Article 15A was therefore drafted with certain amendments and was passed as it now stands in Article 22 of our Constitution. Article 21, which provides that no person is to be deprived of life or personal liberty, except according to procedure established by law, is clearly designed to protect a person from physical constraint. Unlike Article 19, the protection under this article is available both to the citizens as well as non-citizens. Deprivation of life is physical restraint on a person in its most extreme form, because on applying such restraint, the person will not exist. The expression personal liberty means freedom of the person from external constraint. Article 21 came up for interpretation before the Supreme Court in A.K. Gopalan versus State of Madras. The validity of the Preventive Detention Act 1950 was challenged on the ground that it contravened Articles 13, 19, 21 and 22 of the Constitution. Certain important aspects regarding the interpretation of Article 21 were brought out by the decision. They are: first, the phrase procedure established by law in Article 21 gave the legislature the final word to determine the law. Second, the word procedure indicated some step or method or manner of proceeding leading up to the deprivation of life or personal liberty, and this procedure has to be established by law. Third, the words established by law must mean state-made law and not the principles of natural justice, because no procedure can be said to have been enacted by those principles. And fourth, the expression personal liberty means liberty relating to or concerning the person or the body of the individual. Article 21 was held as excluding the freedoms dealt with in Article 19. The court ruled that Articles 20 to 22 constituted a comprehensive code and embodied the entire constitutional protection in relation to life and personal liberty, and was not controlled by Article 19. A lawful detention, whether punitive or preventive, does not offend against the protection conferred by Article 19(1)(a) to E and G, as those rights must necessarily end when the freedom of a person is lawfully taken away. So interpreted, Article 19 and Article 22 may therefore easily go together, and there is in reality no conflict between them. A law properly made under Article 22, that is the preventive detention law, and which is valid in all respects under that article and lays down substantive as well as procedural law on the subject, would fully satisfy the requirement of Article 21, and therefore there is no conflict between these two articles. The court also favored strict and literal interpretation rule while interpreting the provisions of the Constitution, including Part 3. The way Article 21 was interpreted by the majority in Gopalan's case meant that Article 21 constituted a restriction only on the executive, which could not act without law, and that Article 21 was impotent against legislative power, which could make any law, howsoever drastic, to impose restraint on personal liberty without being obligated to lay down any reasonable procedure for the purpose. But according to Sri H.M. Siravai, a constitutional expert, Articles 20 to 22 are negative in form but are positive in effect because by preventing restraint on the person except under certain circumstances, they secure the freedom of the person in all other cases. He says that the position which Article 21 occupies, that is, between Article 20 on the one hand and clauses 1 and 2 of Article 22 on the other, and the context in which the words personal liberty appears in Article 21 are of great assistance in ascertaining the meaning of personal liberty. Clause 1 of Article 20 secures freedom of the person by prohibiting ex post facto laws, that is, laws making an act or omission an offense which was lawful when done or omitted to be done, so that a person cannot be imprisoned under an ex post facto law. Clause 2 of Article 20 secures the freedom of a person by providing that a person who has been prosecuted and punished for an offense shall not be again prosecuted and punished for the same offense. Clause 3 of Article 20 secures the freedom of a person from self-incrimination, as it provides that a person shall not be compelled to give evidence which would amount to an admission or confession of crime, because on such admission or confession, his person may be put under restraint by imprisoning him. Article 21, which provides that no person is to be deprived of life or personal liberty except according to procedure established by law, is clearly designed to protect a person from physical restriction. The above conclusion is reinforced by clauses 1 and 2 of Article 22. Article 22 consists of two parts, namely clauses 1 and 2 of Article 22 and clauses 3 to 7 of Article 22. Clauses 1 and 2 of 22 contain valuable safeguards against an unfair procedure for depriving a person of life and personal liberty. Article 21 provides against arbitrary arrest, that is, arrest without the authority of law. Clauses 1 and 2 of Article 22 deal with a matter closely connected to the freedom from arbitrary arrest, namely, freedom from oppression while under arrest. Clause 1 of Article 22 provides that a person who is arrested cannot be detained without being informed as soon as may be of the grounds of such arrest, nor can he be denied the right to consult and to be defended by a legal practitioner of his choice. Clause 2 of Article 22 provides that every person who is arrested and detained in custody must be produced before the nearest magistrate within 24 hours of his arrest, and no such person shall be detained in custody beyond that period without the authority of a magistrate. Thus, assistance of a legal practitioner and the authority of a magistrate are interposed between the arrested person and those arresting him. Clauses 1 and 2 of Article 22 impose fetters on legislative power because no procedure can be validly prescribed contrary to the requirements of Article 22, Clauses 1 and 2. A close examination of these provisions will show that they contain valuable safeguards for a fair procedure. They confer on the accused the right to be informed of the grounds of arrest, to consult and to be defended by a legal practitioner of the arrested person's choice, to be produced before a magistrate within 24 hours, and the right not to be kept in detention beyond 24 hours except by an order of the magistrate. The right of an arrested person to be defended by counsel includes the right to have the charge against him formulated and the right to defend himself against that charge. formulation of a charge and a defense against it necessarily involves a trial of some kind and carries with it the right of testing the evidence in support of the charge by cross-examination and also of destroying it by affirmative evidence. Consequently, any procedure prescribed must be a judicial procedure if the constitutional right of the arrested person to defend himself is not to become ineffective. Such a judicial procedure ensures for the accused a right to approach the High Court under Article 226 and the Supreme Court under Article 32 and Article 136, even if no appeals are provided. The meaning thus given to the expression personal liberty is in substance a person's right not to be subjected to imprisonment, arrest, or other physical coercion in any manner that does not admit of legal justification. A transformation came about in the judicial attitude towards the protection of personal liberty after traumatic experiences of emergency during 1975 to 77, when personal liberty had reached its low water mark. The Supreme Court's decision in ADM Jabalpur versus Shivkant Shukla showed that Article 21, as interpreted in Gopalan case, could not provide any protection against any harsh law seeking to deprive a person of his life or personal liberty. The Supreme Court held that Article 21 was the sole repository of the right to life and personal liberty against its illegal deprivation by the executive. In case the enforcement of Article 21 was suspended by a presidential order under Article 359, that is, during emergency, the court could not inquire whether the executive action depriving a person of his life or personal liberty was authorized by law. After emergency, the Supreme Court in Maneka Gandhi versus Union of India changed this position and gave a fundamental character to the right in Article 21. This was done by establishing a relationship between Articles 14, 19, and 21, which was denied in Gopalan. It was held that Article 21 does not exclude Article 19, and a law prescribing a procedure for depriving a person of personal liberty will have to meet the requirement of Article 21 and also of Article 19 as well as of Article 14. It was explained that the principle of reasonableness, which is an essential element of equality or non-arbitrariness pervading Article 14, must also apply with equal force to the procedure contemplated by Article 21. That is, the procedure must be right, just, and fair, and not arbitrary, fanciful, or oppressive. In order that the procedure is right, just, and fair, it should conform to the principles of natural justice. In the present case, it was held that any procedure which permits impairment of the constitutional right to go abroad without giving a reasonable opportunity to show cause has to be condemned as unfair and unjust. Since Maneka Gandhi's case, the Supreme Court gave broader interpretation to Article 21 so as to imply many more fundamental rights like the right to travel abroad, the right to write a book and get it published, the right to socialize with family members and friends, as well as to have interview with lawyer, etc. And in the course of time proved to be a very fruitful source of rights of the people. Same is the case with the right to life. To begin with, the Supreme Court restricted the phrase right to life under Article 21 to mean merely that life cannot be extinguished or taken away by imposing and executing the death sentence except according to the procedure established by law. It also included any act which damages or injures or interferes either permanently or even temporarily with the use of any limb or faculty of a person. When confronted with the question whether the right to life was limited only to protection of limb or faculty, or does it go further and embrace anything more, the Supreme Court in Francis Correll versus Union Territory of Delhi held that the right to life includes the right to live with human dignity and all that goes along with it, namely the bare necessities of life such as adequate nutrition, clothing and shelter over the head, and facilities for reading, writing and expressing oneself in diverse forms, and freely moving about and mixing and mingling with fellow human beings. Since Maneka Gandhi's case, Article 21 proved to be multidimensional. It has been interpreted along with international charters on human rights to imply certain rights from them. In the process of expanding the ambit of Article 21, many directive principles have been integrated with Article 21. In addition, new fundamental rights have also been implied by the Supreme Court. By reading Article 21 with the preamble and the directive principles, the Supreme Court ruled that social justice, right to economic justice, right to economic equality, and economic empowerment of the weaker sections of the society constitute fundamental rights. The court went ahead to create new tools and devise new remedies for upholding the most precious of the precious fundamental right, the right to life and personal liberty. Thus, Maneka Gandhi's case brought the fundamental right to life and personal liberty into prominence, and it is now regarded as the heart of fundamental rights. The evolution of the various aspects of Article 21 in the last 5 decades, due to judicial creativity, will be explained in the next few presentations. Thank you.